Hello, I'm back with another video on the engine start sequence for the PMDG Boeing 737. Now I already have the ground power unit started and all the power on the aircraft with the flight plan loaded, taking off out of Las Vegas heading to Tucson. Now the jetway, the door, the chocks, and the ground power unit can all be enabled or disabled through the FMS at the main menu. It's just something you have to play with and learn how to operate on the main menu part that functions all the aircraft, but the rest of the FMS just works like a regular flight computer. After removing the jetway and closing the door, we can go through the APU startup sequence. Now we're still on ground power. I've already, of course, loaded the flight plan after turning on and aligning the inertial reference systems. I'll make another video showing the initial setup for that. Now on the overhead, working from left to right, I go ahead and flip on the yaw dampener and the far left fuel pump, turn the APU on to the start. It'll crank up, the exhaust gas temperature will start to rise. It has a big gauge right there next to the switch. The EGT will rise and then come back down and settle, and then the power available will illuminate in blue right above the switches for the generators on the APU. Go ahead and flip on the seatbelt lights. Now that it says it's available, switch on the two center switches for the generators on the APU. That'll automatically switch the power over to it. You also want to flip on the bleed air for the APU. It's that silver panel on the far right overhead. I've done it a little bit out of sequence, but once the aircraft is running on the APU power, you can disconnect the ground power unit and remove the chocks after setting the parking brake or making sure that it's set. Turn on the window heat and the probe heats. And on Boeing's, the switches on the overhead panel will flip forward. That means they're on. If they flip backwards, that means they're off. The two center hydraulic switches should be flip forward, turned on. There, I finally remembered to turn the bleed air on the APU. The external lights, at least during the day, it should be the nav lights and the beacon, the red beacon for engine start. The strobes will come on right before you turn on the runway, along with the landing lights. Flip on the left and right flight director for the autopilot, and arm the auto throttle switch. Set the auto brake to reject a takeoff. Now you can push back the aircraft through the stock pushback system that's in the game. The PMDG 737 has its own pushback system and that you can control from the FMS, but I like to use the pushback Pro. Makes it really easy for any aircraft.
This is ground. Stand by.
And you can use the rudder pedals during pushback to steer the aircraft left or right. Of course, you kind of have to flip to an outside view to really see what you're doing, but it just makes it super easy for pushing back any aircraft from the gate.
Okay, sir. The bypass pin is installed. All doors and hatches closed and all ground equipment is removed.
The parking brakes are set. You may lift.
Parking brake set, lifting the aircraft. Standing by for pushback.
Cockpit to ground.
Go ahead.
We are cleared for start and push.
Okay, cleared for push start. Please release parking brake.
Parking brakes are released.
Commencing pushback. You can start the engines in sequence.
It will start in the sequence.
Now you can start the engines during pushback, but it's a little bit cumbersome having to flip back outside the view and steer the pushback tug with your rudder pedals. I usually just wait till I'm parked before I start the main engines.
Okay, pushback completed. Please set your parking brake.
Ground. You may disconnect.
Okay, sir. Clear to disconnect.
On the overhead, starting from the far left panel, just going through and checking everything. Once you get to the fuel panel, all fuel switches are on. The only time you wouldn't flip on the two top switches, which are for the center fuel pumps, is when you wouldn't have any fuel in the center tank. And I have a little bit, so I go ahead and flip those on for now. Just kind of checking each panel as I go down through the flow. And you flip the right engine switch to ground. It's the number 2 engine. The starter will start spooling up the engine. Once it gets to about 20% on N2 for that engine, you can turn the fuel shutoff to on or open. I have the newer style switches for this aircraft, but you just pull the lever up if it's got the old style, or turn the switch up to open the fuel. Once the engine is done with its start sequence, the starter will automatically disengage and the switch will go back to off. The engine will stabilize, and then you can turn the switch for the next engine and just repeat the process. It doesn't really matter which engine you start first. But typically, you start the most far right engine first, and then work your way from right to left on the engines when starting them. Now, in some aircrafts, you can start both engines at the same time and let them spool up together, such as the Boeing 787. I believe you can just start both those engines simultaneously. Now, this aircraft uses bleed air off the APU to start the engines. On the 787, it doesn't have a bleed air system per se. It starts the engines using electricity and electric motors. But once the engines are up and running, you can flip on the left generator switch and right generator switch for the engines, turn off the APU bleed air. The left and right packs go to auto, and the isolation valve in the center goes to auto. Turn the APU off. Then you can get clearance for taxi and flip on your taxi light. Now, the elevator trim you would have already set after calculating your takeoff performance, and the flaps you can set to take off after starting the engines. Usually it's 5 degrees, notch 5. This is where I go ahead and set the flaps to 5. For this aircraft, it's almost always flaps 5 for takeoff. And wait for the indicator to go over to 5 for the flap setting. Then you can get clearance to taxi. To release the parking brake, you just press on the brakes and it automatically releases the parking brake. Right now I'm just fiddling with the radar and the terrain map to set it up the way I like it. You really don't want to turn the weather radar on until you're taxiing down the taxiway. You can go ahead and set the transponder knob all the way over to the right for the traffic avoidance system. The transponder code you would have already gotten when you called up clearance. And it types it in automatically for you.
Ground Southwest 49er88 with Mike ready to taxi IFR.
Southwest 49er88 taxi, 2 and hold short of runway 26 right using taxiway Charlie Bravo. Contact tower on 118.75 when ready.
Taxiing hold short runway 26 right via taxiway Charlie Bravo Southwest 49er88.
Release the parking brake and flip on the taxi light. And gently pull the throttles up till you start moving. Here I'm just checking over the overhead panel one more time, making sure it looks right. As you get towards the runway, check your altimeter, flap setting, projected takeoff, auto brakes, and when you get clearance to taxi onto the runway, flip your landing lights on and turn on the strobe light, which on that switch is all the way up or back for the strobe and nav lights to be on together.
Las Vegas Tower Southwest 49er88 ready for IFR departure runway 26 right.
Southwest 49er88 altimeter 29er.9er 7 wind 05 tree at 4. Cleared for takeoff runway 26 right.
Cleared for takeoff runway 26 right Southwest 49er88.
And I'm just checking everything once again to make sure it's proper for takeoff. If you go and advance the throttles and your flaps aren't set for takeoff or something else isn't configured right, it will actually give you a warning, so you can actually blip the throttles all the way forward just for a second, and if you don't hear an alarm, then you're pretty much good to go. Once you're ready to go, you can bring the throttles up to about halfway, let the engine stabilize, and then press the toga button or the takeoff go around button, and that'll bring the engines up to what you have configured for takeoff in the flight computer performance and what you have set on your autopilot or auto throttle.
Airspeed alive. Knots. V1. Rotate. Positive rate of climb.
Bring the gear up after you get a positive rate of climb, and slowly retract the flaps one notch at a time as your speed increases. You can turn off the taxi light and the auto brake,
Southwest 49er88 contact.
and depending on how long you want to hand fly it, you can hand fly it up to 10,000 feet or so, or you can flip it directly on autopilot and let it take over.
Southwest 49er88. Goodbye.
After
Las Vegas
the gear is
departure
up,
Southwest
after it's been up
49er88
for a
is at
while, you can press that
3,300
little
feet, climbing 10,000 feet.
blue button, or it'll highlight blue on the bottom of the gear handle lever, and flip it to the off position.
Continue to deroute.
See there, the fuel light came on because the center fuel tank ran out of fuel. You just click the button and then go to the fuel panel and turn off the top two fuel pump switches. There you can see I press the button and it puts the gear lever into the off position. That's how it's supposed to be for flight after you move it to the up position, and it fully retracts the landing gear.
Southwest 49er88 climb and maintain flight level 200.
Climb and maintain flight level 200 Southwest 49er88.
But that's the pushback and engine start sequence and the takeoff procedures
Southwest 49er88 contact
for the
Los Angeles
PMDG
Center on 124
Boeing 737.
625. Good day.
Thank you for watching and have a great day.
124 decimal